It took 4 seconds to pull a trigger. It took years to count the bodies those seconds left behind. In a concrete box at USP Leavenworth, former Shelby County Deputy Hoy Bannon lay on a steel bunk, staring at the ceiling as if it might blink first. The prison was never truly quiet. Metal doors slammed, men shouted down vents, someone laughed too loud at a joke about the dirty cop who shot a soldier. Every time the word soldier floated through the air shaft, Bannon's jaw clenched. He could still hear the rain from that night in Tennessee, still taste cordite on the back of his tongue. The sound of the gunshots came in his sleep, always a beat too late to stop them. He rolled onto his side and hissed. A dull ache flared in his right shoulder, right where a shank had found him in a yard riot months earlier. The medic on the tier had called it karma. Bannon called it a reminder. Across the country, high above a glowing operating room at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, Major Isaiah Sterling stood behind thick glass and tried to steady a hand that would not obey him. His rank was gone from his chest, but the Army had never left his posture. 34 years old, once the youngest trauma surgeon in the 101st Airborne, he now watched younger doctors move where he used to stand. Below, a resident's hands trembled over a mangled liver while monitors chirped. A chorus of beeps Isaiah knew too well. He flexed his right fingers inside the discreet brace beneath his blazer. The tremor was slight, but to him, it felt like an earthquake. Rain tapped faintly against the observation window. For a moment, it sounded like it had that night on Highway 41, hammering the hood of his Audi as blue lights spun behind him. In his head, the heart monitor tones merged with distant rotor wash, the memory of a Black Hawk dropping into the parking lot of a small county hospital, blowing the old order sideways. People in Shelby still told that story in half whispers. The day the United States Army walked into their town and treated the sheriff's office like a crime scene. They had cuffed him to a hospital bed like a felon. The Army had flown in a general to cut him loose. Somewhere between those two images, Isaiah Sterling's life had been broken in half. In the reflection on the glass, he saw his own face. Thinner now, eyes older. He heard the orthopedic surgeon from months ago as clearly as if the man were standing behind him. "You will keep the arm, Major, but not the career." Isaiah let his hand fall to his side and forced himself to focus on the operation below, coaching through the headset, lending his mind where his hands could not go. In a prison cell states away, Hoy Bannon pressed his palm against the ache in his shoulder and shut his eyes as the echo of thunder and gunfire bled together. Neither of them had known it that night on Highway 41, under the hard Tennessee rain. But those 4 seconds were just the opening shot. Before his name ever hit the news, Isaiah Sterling's life ran on schedules, protocols, and the quiet belief that order could hold back chaos. Most mornings in Nashville, he ran in the rain. Neighbors thought he was crazy, a black man in a hoodie pounding the sidewalks while thunder rolled over the Cumberland. To Isaiah, the rain was the only thing loud enough to drown out the phantom beeping of monitors and the flatline tones that still woke him up at night. He ran until his lungs burned, until the ghosts of past patients finally fell silent behind him. By day, he split his time between the VA hospital in Nashville and Fort Campbell up on the Kentucky line. At the VA, he patched up old soldiers whose bodies were finally collecting on debts from wars that no one talked about anymore. At Fort Campbell, in classrooms that smelled like coffee and gun oil, he lectured infantry medics and young officers on trauma protocols. "Control your breathing, control the outcome," he would say, drawing a simple line on the whiteboard. "Heart rate up, vision narrows, stupid decisions get made. Slow it down, see the whole picture. That is how you bring your people home." He believed it. He had to. In combat support hospitals in valleys that did not exist on civilian maps, that belief had been the difference between soldiers going home with scars and going home in bags. That faith did not stop when he stepped off base. Isaiah had a whole script rehearsed for traffic stops, built from a lifetime of stories traded between black men the way other people traded recipes. Hands on the wheel, fingers spread, narrate every move. "Sir, my wallet is in my back pocket. I am reaching for it now." Make yourself smaller, softer, less threatening than the shadow of a gun in their heads. He told himself it was not fear. It was preparation, the same way he prepped for a mass casualty drill. If he did everything right, showed his Army ID, stayed calm, the system would see him the way he saw himself. Doctor, officer, asset. That was his illusion, wrapped in logic and rank. Hundreds of miles away in Shelby County, Hoy Bannon's faith was in a different kind of order. Sheriff's deputies in that part of Tennessee wore their years on their belts. Hoy had 15 of them. He knew which judge would sign what warrant, which pastor would vouch for which businessman, which bar the district attorney liked his beer cold and his steak rare. On Sunday mornings, he shook hands in the church parking lot. On Friday nights, he played poker in the back room of a tire shop with the same people who helped him make problems disappear. He called it reading the road. Spot the car that did not fit the neighborhood. Late model Lexus with temporary tags, young black driver, wrong side of town at midnight, smelled like dope even with the windows up. It did not matter if the lab ever found anything. The report would say he smelled marijuana, that there was furtive movement in the cabin, that the suspect was nervous. Probable cause, neatly typed in a box. Body cams, union lawyers, the sheriff, the DA. They were armor thicker than any Kevlar vest. Storm knocked the server out. Camera malfunction, fog of war. He had said all three phrases on the stand before and watched them land like holy scripture. In Shelby County, the badge was the truth. Or that was the story Hoy Bannon told himself. On a Tuesday swing shift, Officer Riker Cole sat beside him in the cruiser, fingers drumming on the dash. 22. Baby on the way. Academy haircut still crisp. He kept glancing at a photo tucked in the visor, his wife's belly rounded under an oversized Tennessee Titans shirt. You ever think about that stop on Route 9, Hoy? He asked quietly, the one with the old guy in the pickup. Bannon squinted at the road. We done about 100 stops on Route 9, kid. You got to narrow it down. The black vet, Cole said. The one with the Vietnam plates. I swore I smelled weed. We tore his truck apart. He had Bible pages and pill bottles back there, not a damn thing else. We left his stuff all over the ditch. He was shaking, Hoy said. People shake when they got something to hide. He was shaking because 3 armed cops had him face down in the gravel, Cole snapped, then winced at his own tone. He took a breath. He sent a complaint to internal, you know. My wife saw it on the kitchen table. She asked me if we could afford a lawyer if it got serious. Nothing is going to get serious, Bannon replied. IA is 3 doors down from the sheriff's office. They are not about to hang us over some old timer with bad nerves. Cole stared out at the pines sliding by. Sometimes I worry, man. What if one day we are wrong about the wrong guy? Hoy. Bannon let out a short laugh. Relax, kid. The badge is the truth around here. As long as we write it right, the paper backs us up. The line was meant as reassurance. To Cole, it landed like a warning. He thought of his unborn daughter, wondered what kind of world he was helping to build for her. Back in Nashville, as the week wore on, Isaiah finished another brutal rotation at the VA, watching too many men his father's age win and lose battles with their own bodies. That evening, he stood in the locker room, staring at himself in the mirror. The fluorescent light washed out the deep brown of his skin, made the tired in his eyes look even heavier. He was not afraid of dying. Afghanistan had burned that fear out of him. What unsettled him, what tightened his chest on dark roads, was the idea of being reduced to a line in someone else's report. Black male, non-compliant, smelled of alcohol, gun present. Suspect reached toward waistband. The narrative could erase everything else. The degrees, the deployments, the years spent stitching strangers back together. Doctor became suspect with 1 checkbox. Hero became threat with 1 lie. That was the thing that kept his pulse a little too high whenever blue lights flashed on the highway behind anyone, even if they were not for him. At the end of a 48-hour stretch, he walked out of the VA into a curtain of Tennessee rain and clicked the fob on his new Audi Q8. The lease payment made his mother shake her head. But after everything he had seen in dusty field hospitals, leather seats, and German engineering felt like a harmless sin. He set the seat back, rolled his shoulders, and pulled onto the highway. Trees crowded close on both sides, their branches dripping black against the sky. The wipers thumped a steady rhythm. Mile after mile, the white lines guided him north toward Fort Campbell and a few hours of sleep before briefing. He set the cruise control, checked his mirrors, signaled every lane change, the way he always preached. Do it by the book. Give no one an excuse. In the cab, the only sounds were the rain and the low murmur of late-night talk radio. Then the inside of the car bloomed blue. The reflection hit the rear view, washing his face in spinning light. A cruiser had eased out from a median he had not even seen, slotting in behind him, grill inches from his bumper. Isaiah's heart climbed into his throat. Then he forced it back down. He flicked on his turn signal, guided the Audi to the shoulder, and let it roll to a stop. Transmission in park. Engine off. He took a deep breath, placed both hands on the wheel, fingers spread wide, and told himself the same lie every black man in America has to whisper to survive. If I do everything right, they will have no reason to hurt me. Highway 41 was almost empty at 2 in the morning. The rain was coming down so hard it looked like the sky had turned to static. Isaiah watched it smear across the windshield, wipers slapping on high, blue light still strobing behind him. He killed the engine. Hazards on. Both hands high on the wheel, fingers splayed. He could feel his pulse in his thumbs. In the side mirror, he saw two shapes step out of the cruiser. One moved with a loose, bored swagger. The other looked tight, jittery, hand hovering close to his holster like it was the only solid thing in the world. They split as they approached, one on his side, one angling toward the passenger door. The tall one swung a mag light up and blasted it straight into Isaiah's face. The world became white. License and registration, the man said. No hello, no sir, no nothing, just gravel and authority. Good evening, officer, Isaiah said, blinking against the glare. My wallet is in my center console. My registration is in the glove box. I am going to reach for them now. I didn't ask for a TED Talk, boy, the cop replied. I asked for your ID. The word boy landed heavier than the rain. Isaiah felt his jaw tighten, a hot spark pushing up from somewhere he usually kept locked away. He saw, in the bright wash of the flashlight, the badge on the man's chest. Bannon, Shelby County Sheriff's Office. He swallowed the spark. Center console, he repeated calmly. My right hand is coming off the wheel. He narrated every inch of motion. Console up. Wallet in sight. Fingers curling slowly around leather. He pulled it out with 2 fingers, set it where Bannon could see. He slid his license free, then his military ID. Major Isaiah Sterling, Medical Corps, 101, 1st Airborne. He held both out between 2 steady fingers. Bannon snatched them, stepped back just far enough that Isaiah could barely see him now, shadowed behind the glare. A major, huh? Bannon drawled. Riker, you see this? We got ourselves a hero. Either that or a stolen valor special. It's valid, officer, Isaiah said. I'm a trauma surgeon with the 101. You can verify it through the base. A surgeon. Bannon laughed, sharp and ugly. You look more like a dope boy who got lucky at a casino. He let something fall. Isaiah heard the light slap of plastic on wet asphalt and knew it was one of his IDs. Step out of the car, Bannon said. Officer, may I ask the reason for this stop? I was not speeding. I've identified myself. I smell narcotics. Bannon lied without even hesitating. Step out now. The calculation took less than a second and felt like an hour. Isaiah could stay in the car and refuse until they dragged him out, giving them a story about a non-compliant suspect. He could argue, raise his voice, demand a supervisor, feed every stereotype already flickering in their eyes. Or he could bury his pride in procedure and hope the system he had spent his life serving would, just this once, serve him back. I'm exiting the vehicle, he said aloud. He unbuckled, moved with exaggerated slowness. When he pushed the door open and stood, his hoodie rode up at the small of his back, exposing the black polymer grip of his Sig Sauer. He froze. Officer, I have a legal firearm on my person, right hip, he announced, hands going up, palms open to the rain. I have a carry permit. Gun, Cole screamed from the passenger side. His voice cracked high with panic. For a heartbeat, everything went perfectly still. Isaiah's hands were up, fingers spread. He could feel the cold water sliding down his wrists, the weight of the pistol pressed against his spine, the 2 sets of eyes on him. Right there, Hoy Bannon had a choice. He could have stepped back, ordered Isaiah to keep his hands up, told Cole to calm down and called for a supervisor. He could have acknowledged what he had just heard, a clear, lawful declaration from a man who was not reaching for anything. Instead, he felt that old familiar surge of power and resentment flood his chest, the badge on his shirt, the gun on his hip, the black man with the expensive car and the calm voice. Something in him decided those 4 seconds belonged to him alone. He drew and fired. Isaiah felt a white-hot fist slam into his right arm. The impact spun him sideways into the door. His fingers exploded into pins and needles, and then nothing at all. The sound was swallowed by the rain, but inside his skull it was deafening. He slid down the side of the Audi into the mud. He saw his right hand flop uselessly, like it belonged to someone else. He tried to curl his fingers. They did not answer. His first thought was not, I am going to die. My hands, he thought. My career. Suspect down, Bannon shouted into his radio. Voice too loud, too practiced. He reached for his weapon. Shots fired. He drew on us. Cole stood frozen by the rear bumper, eyes huge, chest heaving. Hoy, he said hoarsely. He said he had a permit. He put his hands up. I saw it. You saw him reach, Bannon snapped without turning. You saw him go for his waistband. Storms screwing with visibility. High crime corridor, probable narcotics. It was a clean shoot. He holstered his pistol, then walked up and kicked Isaiah's leg apart, mirroring a dozen other stops on a dozen other nights. Stay down, he barked, as if Isaiah had a choice. Pain hammered in waves up Isaiah's side. Blood was soaking his hoodie, hot even in the cold rain. He forced his left hand to move, fingers fumbling at the drawstring. Muscle memory took over, years of training in field conditions snapping into place, even as his world narrowed. Tourniquet high and tight. Stop the bleed. He looped the cord around his upper arm, used his teeth to yank it down, his one good hand to twist until the world went white around the edges. His own heartbeat roared in his ears. Look at that, Bannon sneered to Cole. He knows what he's doing. Probably learned that in a gang fight. We need an ambulance, Cole said, voice shaking. He's bleeding bad, hoy. EMS is coming, Bannon answered, but he did not reach for his radio again. He reached instead for Isaiah's waistband, fingers closing on the cig. He pulled it free and, with a casual flick, tossed it a few feet away into deeper mud where it would look like it had fallen mid-droll. That was the second choice, the real one. He straightened, breathing hard, though he had barely moved. His eyes flicked down to the dead red light on his chest camera. Rain must have fried the body cams, he said, almost conversational. Storm knocked the server too. You're having trouble with yours, right, Riker? Cole looked down at his own unit, the tiny lens beaded with water. His thumb hovered over the button. He could hear his wife in his head, asking if they could afford a lawyer if he lost his badge, his pension, their health insurance. Around them, the highway was empty. No headlights, no witnesses, just trees and asphalt, and a man bleeding into the dirt. Yeah, Cole whispered. Malfunction. He reached up and clicked the camera off. Bannon finally lifted the radio again. Gave dispatch the call for shots fired. Suspect lunged. Officers in fear for their lives. He did not mention the ID in the puddle near his boot. He did not mention the words, I have a legal firearm, or the way Isaiah's hands had been high and empty. The ambulance siren was still distant when Isaiah's world started to gray out. He could hear Bannon's voice somewhere above him, casual, almost bored. Write it up poor, Bannon said. Aggravated assault on a police officer, resisting. Illegal firearm if we can lose the permit. The rain pounded harder. Isaiah stared at his own limp fingers one last time. Then the highway, the blue lights, and the man with the badge all blurred into black. The first thing Isaiah felt when he came back was weight. Not pain, not yet. Just weight on his chest, a heaviness on his left wrist, a drag when he tried to move. Then the sound slid in. The low hiss of oxygen, the soft beep of monitors, a TV playing muted news somewhere down the hall. He opened his eyes to a ceiling he did not recognize. ICU tiles, fluorescent glare. He tried to lift his right hand and felt nothing. His arm was wrapped in thick bandages, elevated on pillows, dead weight attached to his shoulder. His left hand tried to rise to touch it and stopped short with a sharp metallic clink. A handcuff circled his wrist, chaining him to the bed rail. You gotta be kidding me, he whispered, voice rough, throat burning. In the chair by the window, Officer Hoy Bannon crinkled a bag of chips. He had his boots up on the heater, uniform shirt open at the throat, like this was just another long night. Well, look who decided to rejoin us, Major, Bannon said, using the rank like a joke. Welcome back. Isaiah swallowed. My hand, he croaked. What did they do to my hand? Doctors say you'll keep the arm, Bannon said around a mouthful of salt and grease. But you won't be cutting anybody open anytime soon. Nerve damage is a bitch. He popped another chip in his mouth, watching Isaiah's face. Looks like you're out of a job, which is convenient since you're looking at 10 to 20 for attempted murder of a police officer. Isaiah stared at him. The cuff bit into his skin. Attempted murder? You shot me. he said slowly. I announced my weapon. I complied. You know I did. Bannon leaned forward, elbows on his knees. It's your word against mine, he said quietly. And in this county, my word is gold. That badge on your ID, that plays on base. Out here, it is just plastic. He leaned back again, satisfied, the bag crinkling as he dug for crumbs. Isaiah turned his face away, staring at the monitor, tracing out his heartbeats in little green mountains. All his training, all his discipline, and he was chained to a hospital bed, like some street-level felon. A floor and 1,000 miles away, a different kind of storm was brewing. Fort Liberty, North Carolina was never really silent. Helicopters thumped overhead, convoys rattled down training lanes, artillery boomed in the distance. But inside General William Iron Bill Carver's office, the noise ended at the door. He sat behind a battered wooden desk scarred by decades of coffee mugs and field maps, walls lined with framed photos of soldiers he had sent into harm's way. Some frames held medals and folded flags instead of faces. It was 0715. The briefing on new medevac protocols for forward units should have started 15 minutes ago. Major Isaiah Sterling was not in his seat. Carver drummed his fingers once on the blotter, then looked up at his aide. Jenkins, where is he? Captain Sarah Jenkins was lean, sharp-eyed, her hair pulled into a tight bun. Before the uniform, she had written code in a Virginia basement for an agency that officially did not exist. Missing people and bad signals made her skin itch. Calling his cell again. Sir, she said, straight to voicemail. It is not like him. Track his vehicle, Carver said. He did not ask about privacy, did not say please. Sterling's Audi was registered on base, transponder tagged like every other government-authorized vehicle. Jenkins was already at the computer. She typed, scanned, frowned. His car's not on any installation, sir. It's logged at a municipal impound lot. Shelby County. Carver stood. The room seemed to shrink around him. Why? Checking hospital admissions within 50 miles, sir, Jenkins said, fingers flying. She stopped. Shelby County General admitted at 0330. Gunshot wound. Officer involved shooting. Status. Critical, but stable. She swallowed. They have him listed as a suspect under arrest. For a heartbeat, Carver did not move. The air in the office went thin. Gunshot, he repeated. Under arrest. Yes, sir. Carver's voice went very quiet. Get me Jag. Colonel Holloway. Wake him up. Tell him I want him at the helipad in 10 minutes. Spin up a bird. We're going to Shelby County. You want me to notify the sheriff's office there, sir? Jenkins asked. No, Carver said, putting on his beret. I want to look that man in the eye when I take my surgeon back. Shelby County General did not see a lot of helicopters. When the Black Hawk dropped into the parking lot, the downdraft sent trash cans tumbling and knocked 2 plastic no-smoking signs flat. Nurses pressed against the glass, watched their hair whip around their faces. An orderly pulled out his phone and started recording, muttering that this was going to blow up on TikTok. The side door of the helicopter slid open before the skids were fully down. 4 military police in camouflage and helmets jumped out, M4s slung but ready, eyes scanning. Behind them, in a worn field jacket with 3 stars on the chest, walked General Carver, his jaw clenched like he was biting down on steel. Inside, the ER waiting room went still as the group pushed through. The triage nurse stammered something about visitor badges. I am General William Carver, 18th Airborne Corps, he said, voice low but carrying. I have a wounded officer in this facility. You are going to tell me what room he is in, or my men will start opening doors until they find him. Sheriff Jim Gable arrived in a hurry, coffee splashing out of the styrofoam cup in his hand. 20 years in office had given him a permanent squint and a belly that said he liked his own cooking. Now hold on just a damn second, he said, shouldering in front of Carver. You do not just storm into my hospital waving guns around. This here is civilian jurisdiction, General. You have no authority. Carver looked at him like he was looking at a problem set. Beside him, Colonel Miles Holloway, JAG Corps, opened a leather folder. Sheriff, Holloway began, tone as crisp as a law school lecture. Major Sterling is an active-duty Army officer traveling on orders. Under the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution and the Federal Tort Claims Act, any investigation into his conduct falls under federal jurisdiction, including Army CID and the FBI. Bull, Gable snapped. He was on my county highway, not your base. My deputies say he pulled a gun on them. Open and shut. Carver stepped closer until the brim of his beret almost shadowed the sheriff's eyes. Your deputies shot my trauma surgeon, he said quietly. The man who keeps my boys alive when your wars come home in pieces. You have him handcuffed to a bed, like some petty thug. That makes this my problem. He glanced at Holloway. For the record, Colonel, Major Sterling was transporting sensitive medical documents related to classified operations. Any delay in our access to him or his belongings could constitute obstruction of a national security investigation. Holloway did not blink. Noted, sir. Gable hesitated. The MPs behind Carver were not posturing. They stood balanced, hands near their weapons, ready to move on a word. Through the glass doors, the Blackhawks' rotors still turned, thumping like a countdown. You start arresting my people, and we will have the governor on the line in 5 minutes, Gable said, but his voice had lost some of its swagger. Call him, Carver replied. Call the president if you like. In the meantime, you are going to get me the key to those cuffs. Room number, Sheriff. Gable's jaw worked. 304, he muttered. But this isn't over. No, Carver said. It is not. On the 3rd floor, the door to 304 swung open so hard it hit the stopper. Bannon jerked in his chair, chips spilling onto the linoleum. He jumped to his feet, hand instinctively going toward his sidearm before he remembered he was in a hospital and vastly outnumbered. Who the hell are you? He demanded. The man in the doorway took in the scene in a single sweep. Isaiah pale in the bed, one arm in a mountain of bandages, the other cuffed to cold metal. Bannon with crumbs on his vest, the chain between soldier and steel gleaming in the fluorescent light. I am the general who owns that man, Carver said, and you are going to leave this room. Bannon tried to square his shoulders. I am guarding a suspect, he said. He tried to kill a deputy. You do not give me orders in my jurisdiction. Carver's eyes went colder than the rain outside. You are guarding a victim, deputy. And if you are not out of this room in 5 seconds, I will have my MPs detain you as an enemy combatant interfering with a federal operation. The biggest of the MPs stepped into view behind Carver, expression impassive. His hand rested on his rifle. The message was clear. Bannon grabbed his chip bag with more force than necessary and shouldered past them. This isn't over, he muttered as he brushed by the general. Carver ignored him. He moved to the bedside, his face losing some of its hardness as he looked down at Isaiah. Major, he said softly. Isaiah blinked up at him, disoriented, morphine fog muffling the edges of everything. He tried to bring his left hand up to salute and was jerked short by the cuff. The metal rattled. Sir, he rasped, I would get to attention if your sheriff would let me. Carver stared at the cuff for a long second. Then he turned to Jenkins, who had followed them in. Why is my surgeon chained to your furniture? He asked the room. We do not have the key, sir. The charged nurse stammered from the doorway. The sheriff's office? Sergeant, Carver said, cutting her off. Bolt cutters. The big MP disappeared and returned with a set of heavy cutters from the maintenance closet. He slid the jaws over the chain, glanced once at Carver for permission, and squeezed. The link snapped with a sharp, ringing crack. Isaiah's left wrist dropped free. He cradled it against his chest, the red mark already blooming where the cuff had bitten deep. For a second, he just breathed, feeling the strange lightness of not being tethered to something for the first time since the highway. Then his gaze drifted to his right hand, swallowed by bandages. He tried to wiggle his fingers. Nothing happened. They took my hands, sir, he said, the words tearing out of him before he could stop them. They took my hands. For a moment, the tough old general looked as if someone had just punched him. He set a broad palm gently on Isaiah's uninjured shoulder. No, son, he said. They ruined your arm. Your hands. We'll see. But what they are not taking is your name, your rank, or the story of what happened out there. We are not bringing rifles to this fight. We are bringing the truth, and we are going to bury them with it. Downstairs, Sheriff Gable was already on his phone, voice low and urgent, asking the district attorney how far the Army could really push, what the Union would do, how much cover the governor would give if this turned ugly. Across town, in a cheap highway motel that smelled faintly of cigarettes and bleach, Captain Jenkins and Colonel Holloway were setting up laptops on a flimsy conference table. Carver stood at the window, looking out over Shelby County like it was a battlefield map. The little town that had once felt like Hoy Bannon's kingdom was about to find itself under a microscope it could not control. The storm that started on Highway 41 was finally rolling in. The Shelby County Sheriff's Office smelled like burnt coffee and old paper. Captain Sarah Jenkins stood at the front desk in her Army OCPS, JAG agents and CID investigators flanking her, a folder tucked under her arm. "We are here for the body cam units from Deputies Hoy Bannon and Riker Cole," she said, "and the dash cam from their cruiser. Chain of custody starts now." The desk sergeant leaned back in his swivel chair, giving her a once-over that landed somewhere between suspicion and condescension. "You're a little late, Captain," he said. "Storm fried the server that night. Cameras took on water. IT's already written it up. Nothing to see." "I did not ask about your server," Jenkins replied. "I asked for the physical Axon units and the cruiser's onboard system. Evidence, Sergeant. You can hand them over, or we can come back with a federal judge's signature and a television crew." A muscle jumped in his jaw. He disappeared through a side door and came back with 2 damp-looking body cams in an evidence tray. "Here," he said, "knock yourself out. They're bricks." "We will," Jenkins said, "and we'll be taking the cruiser too." "You can't just tow our unit," he protested. Colonel Holloway stepped forward, warrant folder open. "We can, actually." Back at the motel, they had turned into a makeshift command post. Jenkins spread the Axon units out on the table like broken toys. The carpet smelled like old cigarettes. A whiteboard in the corner held timelines and names. Carver paced by the window, phone pressed to his ear. "The flash memory's fried," Holloway said, peering over Jenkins's shoulder as she cracked the casing. "Whatever they did real damage." "Local storage is toast," Jenkins agreed, "but Axon Body 3s run a constant pre-event buffer, audio and video." And, she added, digging deeper into the firmware, they handshaked with the cruiser's wireless hub when they got back in the car. "Even if they killed the upload, the cache file lives on the MDT. "So we squeezed the cruiser," Carver said, covering the phone. "Audi Corporate is on." "You sure that Q8 of his recorded anything worth breaking privacy rules over?" "Isaiah told me he paid extra for the safety package, sir," Jenkins said. "Presense 360, cameras in the mirrors, the grille, rear. If that car took an impact, it locked 30 seconds of footage into a black box. If the battery still had juice when it got to impound, we're in business." Carver nodded into the phone. "This is General Carver," he said. "I need a technical liaison and the master override for a 2023 Audi Q8 registered to Major Isaiah Sterling. Yes, I understand, and yes, this is a national security issue." By the time the sun dropped low over Shelby County, the story had leaked. A local station ran with a crawl that read, "Army surgeon shot in traffic stop outside Nashville." By the late broadcast, national outlets had picked it up. Cable shows filled the gaps with whoever they could get on short notice. A retired cop talking about split-second decisions. A black veteran from the next county over-describing the way his heart rate spiked every time blue lights lit up behind him. A civil rights lawyer reminding everyone how many times body cameras had miraculously failed before. Outside the hospital and in front of the courthouse, small groups began to gather, mostly black, mostly quiet, holding handmade signs. "Justice for Major Sterling. Stop shooting heroes." The chant started to build, anger catching like dry grass. Carver stepped out onto the hospital steps as someone shoved a microphone in his face. "General, do you support these protests, sir?" "Are you calling for charges?" one reporter shouted. "We are not going to burn this town down over one man's ego." Carver said, "We are going to court. We are going to put the facts under lights. I'm asking everyone who wears a uniform or has ever loved someone who wears one, let the process work. We fight this in the courtroom, not in the streets." The process, in Shelby County's mind, meant burying it fast. The preliminary hearing was set in record time. Judge Eustace Moore's courtroom was paneled in dark wood and fatigue. He had the look of a man who had spent 30 years trying to keep his docket from drowning him. At the defense table, Bannon sat in a soft blue sweater his union lawyer had insisted on, hair combed, face shaved. Without his uniform, he looked smaller, less bulletproof. Next to him, Riker Cole twisted his wedding band, eyes fixed on the table. Sheriff Gable sat in the front row, arms crossed, chin up. District Attorney Harold Cobb shuffled his notes, cleared his throat, and addressed the bench. "Your Honor," he began, "this case is tragic, no question. But we are talking about a fog of war situation on a high-crime corridor. Two officers, outnumbered by circumstances, facing a suspect who admitted to having a firearm. The body cameras were unfortunately damaged by severe weather. Without clear video evidence, there is no basis for a felony indictment. At most, we are looking at negligence. Gerald Vance, Bannon's lawyer, took the baton with an easy smile. Officer Bannon has served this community with distinction for 15 years, he said, placing a hand theatrically on Hoy's shoulder. He is a husband, a father, a man who has walked toward danger while others ran. On that night, he made a split-second call to protect his rookie partner from a man who said he had a gun. To criminalize that is to condemn every cop in this state. Judge Moore sighed softly, given the lack of visual evidence and the unfortunate malfunction of the cameras, he said. I am inclined to agree. Without more, the court must give deference to law enforcement testimony. I am prepared to dismiss. The heavy double doors at the back of the courtroom banged open. Every head turned. Colonel Holloway strode down the aisle, dress uniform sharp, briefcase in hand. Beside him walked a man in a dark suit with a Department of Justice pin on his lapel. Behind them came 4 U.S. Marshals and 2 FBI agents. Your Honor, Holloway said, voice cutting clean through the murmurs. Miles Holloway, Judge Advocate General's Corps. This is Assistant United States Attorney David Ross. We are filing an emergency motion to stay these proceedings and to assert federal jurisdiction. On what grounds? Judge Moore demanded, bristling. This is a state matter, Colonel. Not anymore, Ross said, placing a thick file on the prosecution table, then sliding a matching copy toward the defense. Under Title 18, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, and due to the involvement of an active duty Army officer on orders, the Department of Justice is bringing civil rights charges against Deputies Bannon and Cole. We are also investigating a potential conspiracy to obstruct justice within the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Gable shot to his feet. You got no evidence, he barked. Cameras were broken in that storm. We told you that. The police cameras were broken, General Carver said from the gallery, rising slowly. The room quieted on instinct. But Major Sterling drives an Audi Q8 with a pre-Sense 360 system. You forgot to check the car. Judge Moore frowned. What is he talking about? Captain Jenkins stepped up to the AV cart at the side of the room, a laptop already wired into a drop-down screen. With the judge's reluctant nod, she hit a key. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered, then stabilized. This, Jenkins said, is footage recovered from the driver's side mirror camera of Major Sterling's vehicle, synced with interior audio, time-stamped, GPS tagged, unedited. Rain filled the frame, silver streaks under the harsh glow of headlights. The angle showed the open driver's door and Isaiah stepping out, hands immediately rising high into the air, palms visible. The audio came through clear. I am exiting the vehicle, Isaiah's voice said, calm and measured. I have a legal firearm on my person, right hip. I have a permit. The camera caught Hoy Bannon's face and profile as he moved into view. He was not flinching. He was not yelling. He was chewing gum. Gun. Cole's voice shouted, thin and panicked, off-screen. Isaiah did not move. The footage froze, stepped frame by frame. Hands up, fingers extended, no reach, no lunge. Then Bannon's arm came up, muzzle flash blooming bright in the rain. There were gasps in the gallery as Isaiah's body jerked and disappeared down the side of the car. Someone swore under their breath. The judge's mouth hung open. Jenkins let the clip roll. The angle shifted as the car rocked from the impact. The mirror caught Bannon walking into the beam of the headlights, bending down. They watched him reach into Isaiah's waistband, pull the cig free, and toss it deliberately into the mud. Write it up poor, Bannon's voice said, louder now, every word carving into the silence. Aggravated assault. Not if we lose the permit. The screen went black. No one spoke for several seconds. The only sound was the soft hum of the ventilation system and someone in the back trying not to cry. Judge Moore cleared his throat twice. His hand shook when he reached for his water. Mr. Cobb, he said finally, do you wish to revise your position regarding probable cause? Cobb looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. No, Your Honor, he managed. The state, yields to the federal motion. David Ross turned to the marshals. Deputy Hoy Bannon, he said, voice hard now. Deputy Riker Cole, you are under arrest for deprivation of rights under color of law, resulting in bodily injury, attempted murder, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. Sheriff James Gable, you are under investigation for conspiracy and obstruction. Agents, 2 marshals moved on Bannon. They did not treat him gently. One kicked his feet apart, slammed him chest first onto the defense table, his arms wrenched back. The crack of the cuffs was loud and precise. Get your hands behind your back, one of them barked. This is a circus, Bannon gasped, struggling. I followed protocol. He reached. The camera. We all saw the video. Hoy, Carver said quietly from his seat. He did not reach. You did. On the other side of the room, the FBI agents closed in on Sheriff Gable as he edged toward a side door. He tried to bluster, but they had already produced a warrant. Cole's arrest went almost gently by comparison. He did not fight. He just sat there as the marshals approached, tears spilling over. His pregnant wife sobbed in the front row, hands pressed over her mouth. Riker, she whispered. Riker, please. I'm sorry, he said, voice breaking as they lifted him to his feet. I'm so sorry. The blue wall did not crack slowly. It shattered in an instant, under fluorescent lights and the unblinking eye of an Audi's side mirror. When the chaos settled, when the marshals had marched Bannon and Cole out through the same doors they had strutted in through months before, when Sheriff Gable was led away red-faced and raging, the courtroom slowly exhaled. Isaiah sat in the front row, his right arm in a black sling, dress uniform jacket hanging a little looser than it used to. The pain meds dulled the throbbing, but did nothing for the knot in his chest. Carver leaned down beside him. We got them, son, he said quietly. We got them all. Isaiah watched the empty doorway, where the men who had rewritten his life had just vanished. He flexed his left hand, felt the sling tug at his ruined arm. We got justice, he said, voice barely above a whisper. But who is going to give me back my hands? No one had an answer for that. By the time the federal trial was over, the cameras were gone. For a few weeks, America had cared a lot about Hoy Bannon and Major Isaiah Sterling. Cable news ran the Audi footage on loop. Commentators argued about bias training, the thin blue line. Editorials praised the rare moment when a badge did not beat a body in court. Then a new story came along, a different video, a different name. The headlines moved on. The sentences did not. Bannon got 20 years in federal prison. Cole got 5 for conspiracy and lying to investigators. Sheriff Gable resigned in disgrace and pretended it was a health issue. District Attorney Cobb announced an early retirement to spend more time with his family. In Shelby County, people still argued about what had really happened on Highway 41, but they did it quieter now. For Isaiah, the noise of the world had shrunk to the sound of Velcro straps and therapist counting. In a rehab gym in Nashville, he sat at a table covered in little objects meant for children. Foam balls, pegs, blocks. He picked up a sponge ball with his right hand and squeezed until his forearm shook. Good, the therapist said. 5 more. Sweat ran down the side of his face. The strength was coming back. He could grip now. He could hold a coffee mug most days without dropping it. He could tie his shoes again if he took his time. Then came the real test. In a quiet exam room, a neurologist taped tiny sensors along his forearm and fingers. Isaiah traced lines on a tablet, drew circles, tried to hold a stylus perfectly still. The doctor watched the monitor display every microscopic tremble. You have good gross strength, the doctor said at last. Function for daily life is strong, but the radial nerve took a serious hit. There is a microtremor that will not resolve. Will it get better? Isaiah asked. Maybe a little. Not enough. Not for what you do in an operating room. What I did, Isaiah corrected softly. The medical board at Fort Campbell sat behind a long table. 3 officers in uniforms, 1 civilian specialist. Isaiah wore his dress greens one last time. His right hand would not stop tapping his thumb against his thigh. He pressed it flat. They thanked him for his service. They read the findings. They told him that due to permanent disability, he would be medically retired. There was a polite pause, as if they were waiting for him to be grateful. So that is it, he said. 1 traffic stop, and the Army is done with me. We are not done with you, Major, the senior officer answered. We just cannot send you back to an operating room or a forward unit. We have to be realistic. Isaiah heard the words and felt something inside him break with less drama than bone. The system that had moved heaven and earth to punish the men who shot him could not give him back the one thing he had built his life around. Later, in his small apartment, he sat at the kitchen table with a stack of unopened mail, bills, forms. One letter stood out, the envelope thin and cheap, with a federal prison return address. He almost threw it away. Instead, he opened it. Dear Dr. Sterling, it began in shaky handwriting. This is Riker Cole. I know I am the last person you want to hear from. I am writing because I do not want my kid to grow up thinking I stayed quiet forever. Cole wrote about that night, about hearing Isaiah say the words legal firearm and permit, about feeling his own thumb hit the camera switch. He admitted that he had been more afraid of losing his badge and his health insurance than of what they were doing to a man in the mud. I told myself it was Hoy's call, he wrote. I told myself the system would sort it out. It was easier to be another silent cop than to be the one who broke ranks. I am sorry, not the courtroom kind. The kind you feel at 3 in the morning when you cannot sleep and you hear the gunshot again. Isaiah folded the letter back up and sat for a long time staring at the cheap paper. It was not just 2 bad apples. It was a tree that punished anything that grew straight. General Carver came by once a month. Sometimes he brought barbecue. Sometimes he brought files. Always he brought that same fierce energy, a man who did not know how to half commit to anything. You look bored, Carver said one afternoon, dropping into a chair. That is dangerous. I am retired, Isaiah said. Bored comes with the couch. Carver snorted. You are 36. Retirement is for old colonels and golf courses. He was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward. I want to tell you something straight, he said. When they shot you, I was furious. You are my surgeon. That was personal, but it was not just that. I could not let some county deputy put a bullet in a major and have the Army act like it was nothing. That is bad for the institution. It tells every soldier under my command that their lives do not matter off base. Isaiah met his eyes. So I was both, he said, a man and a message. That is how every system works, Carver replied. In this uniform, you are a person and an asset. Both truths can exist. The danger is when people forget the first and see you only as the second. For the first time, Isaiah saw it clearly. The Army had gone to war for him in court, in part because it was right, and in part because it needed to protect itself. The same way the sheriff had closed ranks for Bannon, the Army had closed ranks for him. Different cause, same instinct. The twist was not in what the bad guys had done. It was in how close the good guys sometimes came to the same edge. Months later, Carver showed up in a blazer instead of a uniform. You look weird, Isaiah said. Civilian clothes do not suit you. Get used to it, Carver replied. I am officially off the payroll. But I managed to land somewhere useful. Board of Vanderbilt University Medical Center. They have a problem you can solve. Isaiah frowned. I cannot operate. They have plenty of hands, Carver said. What they do not have is your head. Their trauma residency program is a mess. Brilliant kids, no discipline, no battlefield mindset. They need a director, someone who has seen the worst and can teach them how not to freeze when the blood hits the floor. Isaiah let out a humorless laugh. A surgeon who does not cut. That is like a pilot who does not fly. Or a general who does not kick down doors anymore, Carver said. You think my only value was carrying a rifle. Your value is not in your grip strength. It is in how you see patterns in chaos. You can shape 100 surgeons, maybe 1,000 over a career. That is a lot of lives. Isaiah sat with that for a long time after Carver left. The word director felt hollow at first, like a participation trophy. Yet when he closed his eyes, he saw the residents in Vanderbilt's OR, hands shaking over torn arteries, waiting for someone to tell them where to cut. Maybe healing did not always come from the person holding the scalpel. Maybe it could come from the voice in their ear. On a gray Monday morning, he put on a suit and walked into a lecture hall at Vanderbilt. The seats were full of young faces, coffee cups, notebooks, nerves. The sign on the door read, Trauma Education with Dr. Isaiah Sterling. He set his notes down, looked at the room, and felt something shift. For the first time since Highway 41, he was not the man in the video or the victim on the table. He was the one framing the story. Good morning, he said. I am Isaiah Sterling. Today we are going to talk about what you do when the room goes red and everyone looks at you. The justice that had dragged his shooters into prison had been loud. This was quieter. No cameras, no headlines. Just a man who had lost his hands, learning that his voice still carried weight. It was not the life he had planned. It was the one he had left, and he was finally starting to see that it could still matter. 5 years after the verdict, their lives had narrowed in opposite directions. At Leavenworth, Hoy Bannon spent 23 hours a day in a concrete cell the size of a parking space. The other hour was the yard, where men eyed him with a special kind of contempt. Dirty cop, shot a soldier. His wife had sent divorce papers in year 2. By year 4, his kids had stopped answering his letters. His swagger had worn down to a nervous hunch. In Nashville, Isaiah Sterling had become a rumor in Scrubs. The director of trauma education at Vanderbilt, the voice on the overhead speaker when everything went to hell. Residents whispered about him like a ghost story. He never touched the scalpel, but from the observation deck, he could talk a bleeding liver back from the cliff. The riot started over contraband, like they usually did. In the yard, 2 gangs crashed together in a blur of fists and plastic shanks. Bannon tried to stay on the fringe. He saw the glint too late. A sharpened toothbrush punched into his right shoulder, deep and vicious. Warmth poured down his side. He went to his knees, hand clamped to the wound, watching the dirt turn black. He was on a helicopter before he fully understood. Level 1 trauma, the guard kept saying. Closest one's Vanderbilt. In OR 3, Dr. Andrew Lim, once the jumpy resident under Isaiah's eye, now an attending, stared at the mess under the lights. "If I ligate the artery, he lives but loses the arm," Lim said into the intercom. "Nerves are shredded. I cannot see a safe plane." From the observation window, Isaiah answered, already in a white coat, heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with medicine. "What is the name, doctor?" Lim checked the chart. "Bannon Hoy. Inmate transfer." Isaiah's stomach dropped. Rain on metal, blue lights, the sound of his own bone cracking. For a second, he could not breathe. "Do we call someone else?" Lim asked. "Sir." Isaiah looked at the trembling vessels on the screen, at the ruined shoulder that mirrored his own arm on that Tennessee highway. One part of him whispered, "Let it go." Let him wake up without it. An arm for an arm. Another part remembered sandbagged tents, boys on stretchers, the oath he had taken before he ever wore a uniform. "No," Isaiah said, "we are not like that. You are going to save it. I will walk you through." The next 4 hours stretched into a lifetime. Isaiah's voice never rose, but every instruction was a commandment. Incision a millimeter lateral. That white band is nerve. Do not touch it. Clip that bleeder. Good. Now graft from the saphenous. Think in 3 dimensions, Lim. From Lim's side of the drape, it was an impossible case. From Isaiah's side of the glass, it was muscle memory wearing someone else's hands. When the final stitch went in and color crept back into the fingers, Lim sagged with relief. "We've got a pulse," he said, warm and pink. 2 days later, in a guarded room, Bannon woke up to the antiseptic hum of a hospital he did not know. His right arm was bandaged and heavy, but when he thought about moving his fingers, they answered. He turned his head and saw the man by the window. Isaiah stood there in a suit and white coat, chart in hand. No uniform, no sling. Just the same eyes Bannon remembered staring up at him from the mud. "You," Bannon whispered. Panic flickered across his face. "You work here." For a second, Isaiah said nothing. Then he stepped closer. "You took my hands," Bannon rasped. "Why didn't you let them take yours? Why not let me feel what you feel?" Isaiah studied him, the lines carved deeper into Bannon's face, the cuff on his ankle chaining him to the bed, the way Isaiah once had been. "Because the uniform doesn't make the man, Hoy," Isaiah said quietly. "Character does. You wore a badge and chose to be a criminal. I wore a hoodie and was still a soldier. I saved your arm so I can live with myself. Not so you can live comfortably." Bannon's eyes filled, not with the courtroom tears he had practiced, but something rawer. Mercy landed heavier than any sentence. Isaiah turned and walked out, the door closing softly behind him, leaving Hoy Bannon alone with a working arm, 4 blank walls, and a life sentence only he could hear. Years later, the highway had been repaved, but the story never really went away. Isaiah Sterling never went back to the operating table. Instead, the surgeons he trained spread out across the country, taking pieces of him into ERS from Atlanta to Seattle. They carried his voice into rooms full of gunshot victims, car wrecks, and the small wars that never made the news. In lecture halls and ethics courses, the case file labeled Major Isaiah Sterling versus Shelby County became required reading for med students and rookie cops. Body cams, bias, the cost of a lie written in arterial red. When Hoy Bannon finally walked out of federal prison at the end of his 20 years, no one was waiting at the gate. The Department of Corrections gave him a plastic bag of belongings and a bus voucher. No badge, no pension, just an old man in a cheap shirt with a right arm that ached every time the clouds rolled in over Kansas. He ended up in a rusted trailer outside a forgotten town, living on odd jobs and whatever he could scrap together. He kept the TV low, but sometimes he still heard Isaiah's name on talk shows about justice reform and trust in law enforcement. Each mention was a thumb on a bruise that never healed. In Nashville, Isaiah stood at the front of a joint seminar. Half the room wore short white coats. The other half wore academy blues. Future doctors and future officers shifting in their seats, not sure why they had been put together. He did not tell them he was the man in the grainy footage. He did not show the video. Instead, he drew a circle on the board and wrote 3 words inside it: badge, uniform, white coat. These are symbols, he said. They give you power. The power to end a career, to end a life, or to save one. The question is not whether you will have that power. You will. The question is this: what do you do when you have the power to end someone and the choice to save them? The room was very quiet. Justice is not just handcuffs and sentences, Isaiah went on. Sometimes justice is telling the truth when everyone around you is lying. Sometimes it is refusing to pull the trigger inside your own head and become the thing you hate. Revenge changes what they feel. Mercy changes who you are. He did not mention Riker Cole by name, but he thought of the shaky letters from a low-security prison and the courage it had taken, too late but still real, to finally write down the truth. That night, rain pattered against his window the way it had on Highway 41. His right hand still trembled if he stared at it too long, a reminder written into his nerves. He had stopped wishing it away. The scar was a line in a story he was no longer ashamed to tell. In the end, the shot that ruined his hands did not define Isaiah Sterling. The choice he made when he finally held Hoy Bannon's life in his own did. If this story hit something in you, if you believe power should come with conscience and not just force, do one simple thing. Like this video so more people hear it. Share it with someone who still thinks a badge or a title makes a person untouchable. And if you want more true justice stories told with heart, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell, because some echoes of justice do not fade. We do not outgrow them. We grow into the people they demand us to be.